There's a phrase most people say when they're hurt. Not when they're angry, not when they're ready to fight. When they've already started to give up. Do whatever you want. 3 words, said calmly, said quietly, sometimes even with a small smile. And almost every time the person who hears it thinks, good, no conflict. But the person who said it is thinking something completely different. They're thinking, if you actually cared, you wouldn't need me to tell you. That gap between what was said and what was meant is where relationships don't explode. They dissolve, slowly, quietly, without a single dramatic moment anyone could point to later. And today, I want to show you exactly how it happens, through 7 phrases you've probably said or heard, or both. Because the most dangerous communication mistakes don't sound like mistakes at all. They sound perfectly reasonable, until they don't. My name is Daniel Mercer, and after years of listening to people describe the moment they realized something had already changed, not through a fight, not through a betrayal, but through a sentence they couldn't quite explain, I started to notice a pattern. The relationships that end don't usually end with a fight. They end with a pattern. A quiet, invisible pattern of things said and things left unsaid that accumulate until one day one person realizes they've stopped trying, and they can't remember exactly when that happened. That's the part no one talks about. What happens in relationships isn't just what we say. It's what we say instead of what we mean. And that substitution, over time, costs more than any argument ever could. Because arguments, at least, are honest. These phrases are not. Here are the 7. Number 1. Do whatever you want. When someone says this, they are almost never giving permission. What they're actually communicating is something closer to, I've already told you, directly or indirectly, what I need. You haven't responded to it, and I'm too exhausted or too afraid of seeming needy to say it again. So I'll give you the freedom I don't actually want you to take. It's a test disguised as generosity. Picture this. You ask if they mind you going out with friends. They pause, then say, quietly, flatly, do whatever you want. You go. You come back. Everything seems fine. But something in them filed that moment as, they chose themselves over me. Over time, this trains the relationship to stop engaging. Because engagement starts to feel like a trap that was never explained. Number 2. It's fine. Said flat, said fast, said immediately after something that clearly wasn't fine. But it's fine is almost never resolution. It's postponement. Something happens at dinner. A comment lands wrong. You go quiet. They ask if you're okay. You say, it's fine, and pick up your fork. The meal continues, but the feeling doesn't leave. It gets filed. And what I've heard, consistently, from people describing what went wrong, they don't remember the specific moment. They remember the accumulation, all the times they said, it's fine, and meant something entirely different. All the moments they let pass because naming them felt like too much. They kept letting things go, until they couldn't let anything go anymore. Number 3. Forget it. This one closes conversations. You're trying to explain why something bothered you. Halfway through, you notice their eyes drift. You stop. They look up. What? And you say, forget it. Just like that, the conversation is over, before it ever really started. Forget it arrives when someone has started to share something real, something that required some courage to begin and felt, somewhere in the middle of it, that the other person wasn't fully receiving it. So they stop. The door closes. What gets left outside that door doesn't disappear. It stays there. And every time another door closes, on another conversation, another attempt, what's accumulated outside grows. The relationship doesn't experience it as individual moments. It experiences it as growing distance. Number 4. No, it's okay. This is the most well-intentioned phrase on this list, and one of the most corrosive. Someone offers something, a plan, a decision, a choice. You didn't want that, but you say, "No, it's okay." You say it to avoid friction, to not be the person who complicates things. But what you're actually doing is training your partner to misread you. Think about what that looks like over time. They ask where you want to eat. You say you don't mind. They choose. You're quietly disappointed. They never know. They stop asking because you've always said it was fine. And now they have no idea that it wasn't. One day you're exhausted from carrying things you said were fine, and they have no idea because you told them not to worry. The relationship isn't broken, but the map they've been using to navigate you is wrong. Number 5, I don't care. This one is different from the others on this list, because when most people say, "I don't care," they know, in the exact moment they say it, that it isn't true. They can feel it. The tightness. The thing they're about to say, and then don't. You're in the middle of a disagreement. They ask what you want to do, and you hear yourself say, "I don't care." Flat, final. And even as the words leave your mouth, something inside you thinks, "That's not right." But you say it anyway, because the alternative, saying what you actually want and having it dismissed, feels worse than silence. "I don't care" is what happens when caring has become too expensive. And the other person hears, "You're on your own." So they stop asking. And over time, the relationship stops going anywhere that requires both people to want something. Not because both people stopped caring, because one person decided that showing it wasn't worth the cost. Number 6, whatever. One word. Whatever is what you say when you've already decided the conversation isn't going anywhere and you want the other person to know that without having to say it directly. It's not disengagement. It's something more final than disengagement. It's the emotional equivalent of leaving the room while still standing in it. Someone described it like this. They were mid-argument, trying to explain something important, and the other person just said, "Whatever," and looked away. The argument didn't end, but something did. That's not indifference. That's exhaustion that's been there long enough to look like indifference. The person hearing "whatever" rarely understands what they're actually receiving. They hear, "You don't care." What they're actually hearing is the sound of someone who used to care and wore out. Number 7, it's nothing. Said after something happened, after a comment that stung, after a moment that felt dismissive, after something small that carried underneath it something much larger. And instead of naming it, the person says, "It's nothing," because they don't want to seem too sensitive, because they've learned that naming small things sometimes leads to feeling like they're making things up. But here's what actually happens. Every time someone carries something they called nothing, the weight doesn't disappear, it transfers, invisibly, to the next conversation, to the next moment, to the next time something small happens, and suddenly the reaction seems completely out of proportion. And the other person is confused, because they only saw the last thing. They have no idea what came before it. All the nothings that were quietly carried and never put down. They thought things were fine, because they were told specifically that things were fine. Here's what these 7 phrases have in common. They all protect something in the moment. They protect you from having to be vulnerable, from having to say the thing that feels too exposed. "This hurt me. This matters to me. I need something different from you." And that protection feels rational. It feels like maturity even, like choosing peace over drama. But what it's actually doing is replacing connection with management. You stop communicating what you feel. You start managing what the other person sees. And the relationship starts responding to the version of you that you're performing, not the version that actually exists. The distance this creates doesn't announce itself. There's no moment you can point to. Just a slow accumulation of reasonable choices, each one small enough to ignore, until one day the space between two people is wide enough that neither one remembers crossing it. Here's the part I want you to stay with. Every single one of these phrases is not said by someone who stopped caring. It's said by someone who cares too much to risk saying the real thing. Every one of these phrases is a need wearing a mask. And the tragedy, the real tragedy, is that the mask works. The conflict is avoided, the tension passes, but the need doesn't go anywhere. It waits, and it collects interest. If you recognized yourself in any of this, in either role, I want to say something clearly. This is not about fault, it's about patterns. And patterns, unlike feelings, can be interrupted the moment you see them clearly. So here's the only thing I'll ask you to try. The next time you hear yourself reaching for one of these phrases, pause and ask one question. What do I actually need right now, and what would happen if I said that instead? That question, in that moment, is worth more than any communication strategy I could give you. Because most relationship problems aren't caused by people who don't care. They're caused by people who care and have learned, somewhere along the way, that saying so directly isn't safe. If this video describes something you've been feeling but couldn't name, send it to someone. Not as an accusation, not as a lesson, just as a way of saying, I think this is happening between us, and I don't want it to. The conversation you keep postponing is already happening, just not out loud.